My name's Aubrey, and I used to believe that kindness could fix anything. I married into a family that never truly accepted me, but I kept trying anyway. I didn't want to just be Nathan's wife. I wanted to be a real part of the family, not just someone they tolerated. So when Nathan's younger brother, Connor, got expelled from college and no one in the family stepped up, I did. I paid his tuition out of pocket. Quietly. Without fanfare. Thinking maybe this would be the gesture that finally broke through the coldness. Nathan warned me not to get my hopes up. They're complicated, he said. But I didn't listen. I thought if I just gave enough, tried hard enough, they'd come around. I was wrong. Because what I uncovered later wasn't just resentment. It was calculated, long-standing, and aimed directly at me. From the very start, it started with a family dinner I wasn't even supposed to attend. My mother-in-law had made it clear I was always welcome, but somehow never remembered to include me in group texts or updates. That night, though, Nathan insisted I come along. "Connor's got something to tell us," he said. Connor, the golden child, or at least that's how it always seemed, sat slouched at the table, barely able to look anyone in the eye. After a few awkward silences, he mumbled the truth: he'd been expelled from college. Something about missing too many classes and failing a required course. My mother-in-law gasped but didn't seem surprised. The twins looked mildly amused, sipping their wine like it was entertainment. No one offered a solution. No one even asked him what he planned to do next. I was the only one who spoke. "Is there anything we can do to help?" Connor looked up, stunned. I might be able to appeal, but I'd have to re-enroll and pay this semester in full, up front. It's not cheap. He didn't say the number, but it was clear from the way his voice cracked. It was too much. Too much for someone who hadn't held a job longer than a summer. Too much for a mother who hadn't worked in years. Too much for sisters who lived off family allowances and side gigs they never seemed to stick with. I looked around the table. Blank stares. A few shrugs. My mother-in-law looked away. Nathan shifted in his seat, tense. He didn't say anything either. I could tell he was torn. This was his family, but also not his responsibility. Not anymore. So I spoke again. "If it's a timing issue, maybe I can help front the cost. At least get you back in and stable again." I didn't expect applause, but I also didn't expect the complete silence that followed. Just a long, uncomfortable silence, until my mother-in-law finally forced a smile and said, "That's very generous of you, Aubrey." It didn't feel like a thank you. Later that night, Nathan and I fought. Not loudly, but quietly, uncomfortably. "Aubrey, I know you mean well," he said, "but you don't owe them anything. Especially not thousands of dollars." "It's not about owing," I argued. "It's about showing I care about you. About being part of this family." He looked at me for a long moment. "They won't see it that way." Maybe he was right, but I didn't care. I wired the payment to Connor's school 2 days later. I even followed up with the registrar's office to confirm everything went through. I made sure he had a second chance, a clean slate. And just like that, no thank you card, no follow-up call, no invite to celebrate, just silence. Connor went back to school. My mother-in-law mentioned it in passing a few weeks later when we bumped into her at brunch. "Oh, I'm so glad he got things sorted." Like it had all happened on its own. But still, I told myself not to take it personally. Maybe they just weren't the emotional type. Maybe this was their way of adjusting. Maybe I was finally breaking through the wall. Slowly, quietly, one act of kindness at a time. I believed that. Until one Tuesday afternoon, when I logged into Nathan's shared iPad to print a boarding pass, and accidentally opened a message thread that changed everything. I wasn't snooping. I need to make that clear. Nathan had asked me to check his email for a flight confirmation, and the shared iPad was sitting right there. I opened the browser, and one of the tabs was still logged into his messages. I didn't even mean to click it, but when my finger brushed the screen, the app opened, and there it was, a group chat, titled, "Family Only." I froze. I'd never seen it before. It wasn't one of those things I should have had access to. But in that split second, I saw my name. Not in a, "How's Aubrey doing?" kind of way. No, it was more like, of course she paid. That's what she's for. Let her play, sugar mama. She's desperate for approval. She's not even family, but hey, free tuition. The messages weren't even old. The most recent one was from that morning, from my mother-in-law. If she's willing to throw her money away to look like a hero, let her. I felt my throat tighten. My ears rang. I couldn't breathe. These weren't just snide comments. This was how they really talked about me. My kindness, my intentions, twisted into a joke, a transaction, a performance. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I sat there for a long time, scrolling up, reading every line, each one hitting harder than the last. Connor had written, "She probably thinks she bought her way into the family." One of the twins added, "Still doesn't mean she belongs." And then, the one that cracked something in May. Dad would have hated her. That one was from my mother-in-law. And I don't even know why that stung more than the others. Maybe because Nathan's dad had passed away years before I ever met them. I never had the chance to meet him, never spoke his name in vain, and never disrespected anything about him. But they were using him as a weapon. Against me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Nathan noticed something was wrong. "You've been quiet," he said gently, touching my hand. "Did something happen?" I stared at him, wondering how much he knew. Was he part of it? Had he read those messages and looked the other way? I wanted to ask. I really did. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because if he had known and said nothing, that would break me in a way I didn't know how to come back from. So I just said, "I'm tired." And I was. Tired of trying. Tired of proving. I was tired of bending myself into someone likable, just to be tolerated by people who had no interest in accepting me to begin with. They didn't see me as family. Not after 3 years of marriage. Not after holiday dinners, shared vacations, countless rides to and from their house, and now, thousands of dollars spent trying to help. No. To them, I was just Nathan's wife, an outsider with a credit card. The next morning, I woke up with a different kind of energy. Cold, focused, not broken. Not yet. If they thought they could laugh behind my back and still take what they wanted from me, they were about to learn something new about Aubrey. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. I was going to show them what happens when you mistake someone's kindness for weakness. I didn't say a word for the next 2 days. Not to my husband. Not to Connor. And definitely not to my mother-in-law. But I watched. I watched everything more closely than I ever had before. The way they spoke to me. The way they brushed past me at a family brunch we attended that weekend. The way my mother-in-law smiled at me. Thin-lipped and performative, like a queen tolerating a court jester. And I smiled right back. Because now I knew exactly where I stood, and I had no intention of staying there. It was on the drive home from that brunch that I finally asked Nathan the question that had been burning in my throat. "Do you ever read the family group chat?" He glanced at me. "Sometimes." "Why? Have you seen what they say about me in there?" He hesitated. That pause, that microsecond of hesitation, it told me everything. He had seen it, or at least enough of it. I looked away, my chest tightening. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "I didn't want to hurt you," he said quietly. "And I hoped, maybe if I ignored it, they'd stop." "They didn't," I said. "They just got bolder." That night, I didn't sleep again. But it wasn't grief anymore. It was strategy. If I were the villain in their story, then maybe it was time I played the part, on my terms. I started by pulling together receipts. Not metaphorical ones, actual receipts. The tuition payment confirmation, screenshots of my messages with the school's registrar, even the follow-up thank you note I sent to Connor with a copy of his enrollment status. Just in case. And then I printed out their words. Every vile line from that group chat. No edits. No embellishments. Just pure, unfiltered proof of who they really were when they thought no one else could see. And then I made a plan. My mother-in-law was planning a family appreciation dinner the following weekend. She'd texted me about it a few days prior, saying she wanted to formally acknowledge everyone who's been there for Connor. The irony was suffocating. She didn't know I'd seen the messages. She probably thought I was still in the dark, still the idiot who wanted to belong. Perfect. I texted her back the next mornings. Would be honored to attend. I've even prepared something special for the occasion. The dinner was held at her house, of course. Formal dining room, long white tablecloth, candles, printed name cards. I wore a black dress and red lipstick. The kind of bold you wear when you're done pretending. Connor barely looked at me when we arrived. One of the twins actually rolled her eyes. My mother-in-law greeted me with a hug that felt like plastic wrap, tight, suffocating, and disposable. We sat, we toasted. Then my mother-in-law stood up and gave a speech about family unity and rising together through hard times. She looked at Connor with misty eyes and called him fighter. And then she thanked Nathan for his support. Only him. I waited until she finished. Then I stood up. "I'd like to say something too," I said calmly. The room quieted. Nathan shifted beside me. I reached into my bag and pulled out a neat stack of paper. I could see my mother-in-law's smile flicker. "This," I said, holding up the first sheet, "is the receipt for the tuition payment that got Connor reinstated." Dead silence. "And this," I held up another page, "is the email confirmation from the registrar, along with a timeline of every follow-up I made to make sure it all went through." Still no one spoke. "And this," I unfolded the final set of pages and laid them flat on the table, is what your family had to say about me in return." One by one, I read their words aloud. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The words were loud enough on their own. "She's not even family. Let her throw her money away. Still doesn't mean she belongs. Every face at that table shifted, pale, ashen, exposed. My mother-in-law tried to interrupt. Aubrey, I don't think. No, I cut her off. You don't get to speak yet. I turned to Connor. You didn't just accept help, you spit on it. You mocked it. You used me. Then I looked at the twins, and you stood by and laughed. Finally, I turned to my mother-in-law, and you encouraged it. I didn't cry, not a tear, because in that moment I wasn't sad. I was done, and they finally knew it. The car ride home was dead silent. Nathan gripped the steering wheel so tightly I could see the whites of his knuckles. I sat with my arms crossed, staring out the window, heart pounding, not from anger, not anymore, but from the ache of everything that had just unraveled. Halfway down our street, he finally spoke. You planned that? His tone wasn't angry, just stunned. Yes, I said simply. I had to. He pulled into the driveway and killed the engine, but neither of us moved. We just sat there, the soft ticking of the cooling engine filling the space between us. I didn't know you were going to go that far, he said. You mean tell the truth? He looked at me, really looked at me. No. I mean finally stop trying to protect them. Inside the house, I poured a glass of water with hands that were still shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of everything that had been buried now finally dragged into the light. Nathan sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone. He looked older than usual, tired. They hate me, Nathan. I said, my voice softer now. They always have, and I spent years thinking it was a misunderstanding I could fix. He didn't say anything. I thought if I gave enough, smiled enough, and paid enough, they'd eventually see me. See that I love you. See that I'm trying. He closed his eyes. Aubrey, they don't want to see you. The words gutted me, but they were true. I walked over and sat across from him. I need to know something, I said. When you saw what they wrote about me, why didn't you say anything? His jaw clenched. Because I was ashamed. I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. I didn't defend you because part of me thought I could keep the peace if I just stayed quiet. But that wasn't peace. That was cowardice. He looked at me with eyes that were red at the corners. You've been more of a family to me than any of them ever were, and I let them humiliate you. Nathan, I'm done. His voice broke. They don't get to keep doing this. To me. To you. To us. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. That night, Nathan sat down beside me on the couch, reached for my hand, and said, tell me what you need me to do. I'll follow your lead. And I believed him, because silence had protected his family for too long. But now, he'd chosen ours. In the days that followed, I kept a low profile. No texts, no calls, not even a reaction to the fallout from the dinner. I didn't need to scream to make a point. Silence, I was learning, was far more unsettling, especially to people used to getting away with things in the dark. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because while the dinner was a public reckoning, it wasn't the full closure I needed. You see, for years I'd been painted as the outsider. The wife. The one who didn't belong. They whispered behind my back, smiled to my face, and let me foot their bills while calling me pathetic in group chats I was never supposed to see. So I decided it was time to flip the script, one last time. I sent out invitations that Friday. Simple white cards, elegant black text. Gratitude dinner, it said. Hosted by Nathan and Aubrey. The guest list. Every extended family member we'd ever interacted with. Cousins, aunts, uncles. People who'd heard versions of our story only through the filter of my mother-in-law's carefully crafted words. This time, I'd speak for myself. Nathan raised an eyebrow when I handed him his invitation. You're really doing this? I nodded. They made me invisible for years. Now they're going to see me. He didn't argue. Just took my hand and said, whatever happens, I'm with you. The night of the dinner, I wore navy blue. No red, no black, nothing dramatic. I wanted to look calm, grounded, unshakable. We rented out a small private room at a nearby vineyard, intimate but formal. Enough space to make a statement, not a scene. People arrived slowly, unsure of what to expect. I greeted them all warmly and thanked them for coming, smiled like the gracious host they'd always refused to acknowledge I was capable of being. Connor didn't come. Neither did the twins, but my mother-in-law did. Of course she did. She walked in with a practiced grace, like someone ready to charm and deflect in equal measure. Nathan and I greeted her at the door. She smiled at him, barely looked at me. As the room filled, laughter bounced off the walls, wine glasses clinked, and for a moment, I could almost believe this was just another family event. But I knew better. Because this time, the story wasn't theirs to tell. It was mine, and I was going to take it back, one word at a time. Dinner began like any other polite family gathering. Small talk, clinking silverware, compliments about the decor. I watched it all unfold from the head of the table, sitting next to Nathan, watching his extended relatives ease into their roles. Aunt is asking about houseplants. Uncles bragging about retirement plans, cousins discussing kids' report cards. My mother-in-law held court like usual, gracefully dismissing anything that didn't center around her. When the appetizers were cleared, she raised her glass and stood. "I just want to say how touched I am," she began, "that Nathan and his lovely wife have taken the time to host such a thoughtful evening. It means a lot to me, especially after all we've been through as a family." A few people clapped softly. I did not. She continued, her voice syrupy sweet. "In hard times, we lean on each other, we love, we forgive, and most importantly, we move on." That last part, that was directed at me. I stood before she could sit back down. "Thank you," I said calmly. "That was poetic." She smiled, thin and triumphant, assuming I was about to validate her speech. I turned to the room. "I know many of you have heard versions of what's been going on in our family. Some of you have reached out, others have stayed quiet, and that's okay. But tonight, Nathan and I wanted to tell you our version, the real one." The table fell silent, every chair stilled. Even the kids in the back corner looked up from their phones. I continued. "This dinner was never just about gratitude, it's about truth. Because I've been part of this family for 3 years, and for 3 years, I've smiled through things I probably never should have." I reached into the folder beneath my chair and pulled out the same stack of papers I'd carried to the last dinner. But this time, they were organized, labeled, duplicated. One packet for each household present. My mother-in-law's smile cracked. "These are copies of messages from a private group chat called Family Only," I said. "Messages about me. From my husband's siblings. And from his mother." Gasps rippled through the room. "I'm not sharing these to embarrass anyone," I said. "I'm sharing them because I need people to understand that silence has a cost. That when you look the other way while someone is being ridiculed, used, or erased, that's not neutrality. That's complicity." One aunt opened her packet and immediately covered her mouth. Another uncle squinted at the printouts and looked up in disbelief. "Did Connor really write this?" "He did," Nathan answered, his voice steady. "And so did the Twains," I added. "And yes, so did my mother-in-law." She stood abruptly. "This is a betrayal. You had no right." "No," I interrupted. "You betrayed me. I paid Connor's tuition. I drove your daughters to job interviews. And I sat through 100 uncomfortable dinners trying to prove I belonged. And all while you laughed behind my back." My voice didn't rise. I didn't need to yell. The weight of the words carried themselves. "You all told a story where I was the outsider," I said. "But that only works if I stay quiet, and I'm done being quiet." Nathan stood beside me. "She's telling the truth," he said. "I saw the messages. I ignored them at first, and I regret that. But I won't let it continue." My mother-in-law's face flushed with fury. "So what now? You're cutting off your own family?" Nathan didn't hesitate. "No, you already did that. You just didn't realize it yet." The rest of the evening unraveled in silence. Some relatives left early, uncomfortable. Others came up to us privately, apologizing. A few even admitted they'd suspected something was off but never imagined it was this deep. My mother-in-law left without saying goodbye. I watched her walk out the door, shoulders stiff, chin lifted like a woman refusing to admit she'd lost control. Maybe she hadn't expected to be publicly exposed. Maybe she still believed no one would take my word over hers. But this time, I hadn't just told the truth. I'd proved it. And that changes everything. Back home, I poured myself a glass of wine, kicked off my heels, and collapsed onto the couch. Nathan joined me, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. I took a long sip. "I'm not sure yet." But I knew this, for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't chasing a seat at their table anymore. I'd built my own, and I liked the view. The days that followed were quiet, too quiet. No angry texts, no dramatic phone calls, no guilt-tripping emails filled with Bible verses about forgiveness. Just silence, which honestly was louder than anything they could have said. On the third day, Nathan got a voicemail from his mother. I watched him listen to it in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. When it ended, he didn't say anything for a while. Then, she says we humiliated her, that we made her look bad in front of the family. I set my mug down. "Did she apologize?" He shook his head. "She said you should." I laughed. Not bitterly, just exhausted. "I think we're done here," I said quietly. Nathan didn't argue. He deleted the message. That night, he sent out one last text to his family. It wasn't angry or theatrical. It was just final. "We're stepping away. Indefinitely. Don't contact us unless it's to make amends, not excuses." And then, one by one, we blocked them. Phone, email, socials. It was like cutting a cord that had been fraying for years, just waiting for someone to stop pretending it could still hold. In the weeks that followed, we had dinners without tension, movie nights without anxiety, mornings without that sickening feeling in my stomach every time my phone buzzed. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of grief for what could have been if they'd chosen love over ego, kindness over pride. But there was also peace. And I hadn't realized how starved I was for that. Nathan started smiling more, laughing at stupid TV shows again. He even booked a weekend trip for just the two of us, something we hadn't done in years without checking first if Mom might need something. One evening, we sat on the porch, watching the sun melt into the trees. He turned to me and said, "You know, they might never come around." I nodded. "I'm okay with that." He exhaled slowly. "So am I." This wasn't the ending I thought I wanted. But maybe it was the one I needed, because sometimes family isn't who you're born to. It's who stands beside you when the room turns cold. And this time, for the first time, it was just us. And that was enough. If you had told me a year ago that this would be the ending, I wouldn't have believed you. I used to think family was something you had to earn your way into. That if I just gave enough of my time, my money, my patience, they'd finally let me in. But some doors don't open because they were never meant to. And some people only make room for you if you stay smaller than them. I was done shrinking. It wasn't about revenge. It never was. I didn't expose their words to destroy them. I did it so I could stop carrying the weight of a truth no one else wanted to acknowledge. I needed them to see me, not as the girl desperate for approval, but as a woman who knows her worth. And now, I don't need their seat at the table. I've got my own. Nathan and I are building something different now. It's not loud, not dramatic, just real, just ours. We go to dinner without rehearsing conversations. We spend holidays doing things we actually enjoy, not pretending for people who wouldn't notice if we didn't show up. We don't owe them peace, but we owe ourselves freedom. Sometimes people ask if I regret helping Connor, if I regret paying that tuition, giving so much, trying so hard. The truth, no. Because what I did came from a place of hope, not weakness. And I'd rather be someone who tried and learned than someone who never opened the door at all. They taught me who they were. But more importantly, they taught me who I am. And that's a lesson I'll never forget. So if you're reading this and trying to make a place for yourself in a family that keeps pushing you out, stop knocking. Build your own door. You'll be surprised how peaceful it is when it finally closes behind you.